Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Office of Assessment Balance Assessment System presented on the WIDA assessment. So what is a balance assessment system? In 2015, when the Every Student Succeeds Act was established, it emphasized the need for a balance assessment system. For the purpose of this webinar, we are defining a balance assessment system, or BAS, as a set of interconnected assessments that meets the needs of all educational stakeholders for the common purpose of improving education. Balance assessment system provides accurate and timely information about student achievement and learning to individual students, teachers, school and district administrators, as well as local, state, and federal policymakers. More importantly, they encourage and support learning by helping students and teachers see that their continued efforts will result in success. So we're starting off by talking a little bit about what a balance assessment system is, and then we'll get into the WIDA assessment. When you utilize accurate day-to-day classroom assessments added with quality instruction, along with a balance of high-quality standardized tests, you now have a balanced assessment system that will effectively promote student learning. The graphic here shows the balanced assessment system for the state of Delaware. Notice each assessment type is color-coded for clarity on how each is integrated. Formative assessments, the purple strand, are the most used resource and are ongoing all year long. They're used daily for a learning partnership between the student and teacher and have only two distinct purposes: checking for understanding in real time and monitoring instructional effectiveness. Benchmark assessments are indicated in green and occur at multiple points throughout the school year and are used in classroom and district levels. They're used to monitor instructional effectiveness, predict future performance, measure students' learning and growth, and lastly, to make decisions about programs. Interim assessments, shown in blue, are typically given by the school district 2 to 3 times a year. Interim assessments predict future performance, measure student learning and growth, and help make decisions about programs. The last item shown in orange is statewide assessments that are only given once a year, and though used at the school and district level, are primarily for stakeholders at the state level. Statewide assessments are used to predict future performance, measure students' learning and growth, making decisions about programs, and to fulfill accountability requirements. Also, as mentioned previously in this model, formative and benchmark assessments are assessed for learning, whereas interim summatives, including the state testing, are assessments of learning. For those of you just joining, I'm just giving a brief overview of the balance assessment system as well as Delaware's BAS, Balance Assessment System Model or representation. So I just went through what that graphic represents. Now we're going to look at the type of assessments a little bit more in detail. And when we get into the WIDA portion, you'll see that Delaware does not really have like an interim, but it still can be used if districts chooses to use it. We also have, besides myself, Michelle Jackson, here at the Office of Assessment. We have Maria Paxson, who should be joining us or may already be online. Okay, so you'll hear from her and myself a little bit more once we get into the WIDA Access 2.0. Okay, so we're going to look a little bit at the types of assessments. Formative assessment is defined as a multi-step interactive process in which students and teachers engage in instructional activities, gather evidence of learning, and use feedback to adjust teaching and improve learning in real time. These are ongoing and used daily to focus lesson plans and individual student needs. Formative assessments are administered by teachers only for the explicit purpose of diagnosing where students are in their learning and where gaps of knowledge and understanding exist. They're small scale and minute by minute to provide immediate feedback. The next type of assessments we'll discuss are benchmark and interim assessments. Benchmark assessments are for recently taught materials such as a unit, a chapter, or a semester for grades and/or to monitor progress toward learning goals. Test content follows district, school, and/or classroom pacing. And there's also next the interim assessment. They're general achievement measures to monitor progress toward end-of-year goals and identify curricular areas needing additional attention and content, and the content covers full year standards. So interims are very similar to benchmark, though interims are used 2 or 3 times a year and administered by a school district, and benchmark testing occurs more frequently and are given by classroom teachers and even district-wide. So these assessments are designed to serve instructional purposes that should provide results and enable the educators to adapt curriculum or better meet our student needs. So again, going through that balance assessment system model in a little more detail. So we'll now discuss the definition of a summative assessment, which are any type of assessment that occurs after instruction to document achievement. It is also a measure of students' proficiency in a subject, or not just a subject, but also against the state standards. Summatives are an assessment of learning rather than for learning as formatives. So statewide tests are summative as well. However, they are used for the purpose of accountability for state and federal requirements. So yes, we give the assessment because it is a mandate that we have to follow. Summative assessments in the classroom are intended to check what students know and can do, and they should demonstrate what the students are able to do over longer periods of time and are not based on instruction that just took place. These assessments are used for grading purposes. Summative assessments at the state level may be used for accountability purposes, but are also a great source of information for educators in understanding their student performance to help guide instruction. So just as a quick side note, a good example of that is one of the professional development that we recently provided was for the DESA Alt with DLM, where helping teachers to use those score reports to further guide their instruction. So that's another way in which the summative is a useful tool. So for example, if a teacher looks at that Smarter Balance assessment, they can correlate their student performance scores to how well they did for each claim and look at the target. That provides teachers with that knowledge of whether or not a certain target was met by a certain number, a greater number of students, or is there it may help them get an indication of an area of how they should focus their instruction, or look further to see if the model of the test question aligns to the teaching methods implemented. Okay. At the Delaware Department of Education, within each of the accountability assessments, we have included a BAS, Balance Assessment System model for the teaching and learning process, assisting all stakeholders in supporting student learning and helping students promote their own growth. The models are interactive with links embedded for help with further understanding and usage. Each model follows a color-coded system for formative, interim, and summative assessments. So if you have any questions about each of the model at the end of this presentation, we have listed our contact information. So today as I said, we're going over the WIDA model. So this is the WIDA assessment model that is found on our DOE WIDA page. And if you can see my mouse on the screen, you can see where whereas remember I talked about formative, interim, and summative, WIDA is a little bit different. And so we have categorized it into different categories. All right. Okay. So first we're going to look at the balance assessment module in a little bit more detail. All right. Okay. Okay. So if you have a copy of the model, you can take a look at that first section. So the process for that identification and placement begins with the home language survey. So if once they take the home language survey, if a language other than English is identified, then they're given the screener to determine if the student is an English learner. So the WIDA screener is also an online screener for grades 1 through 12, and the paper version is used for students who need it as an accommodation, and the reason when they would use it as an accommodation is if they had a disability or if they had no previous experience using a computer. So that screener is given once upon its initial entry to identify whether or not a student is an English learner, and it determines whether or not they qualify to be an English learner. So students in kindergarten and the first semester of first grade would take the WIDA model for kindergarten. All right. And the score reports help to make the decision of whether or not to best whether or not the score reports would make that decision on whether or not to how to support a potential English learner. And so the scores are then entered into the state database in order to determine eligibility status. And this is definitely where Maria Paxson comes in. I believe she's on the line, so I'm not sure if she wants to chime in with some further information here.
Hi, Michelle. Yeah, so
Hi.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to those of you that are joining us. Yeah, so as Michelle did a great job sort of summarizing all of that. And we know in Delaware we use WIDA suite of tools to support our placement decisions. So we primarily are online in grades 1 through 12 using the WIDA screener. And those scores, and then the WIDA model is used in kindergarten in the first semester of first grade to support placement, and then those scores help us determine how we provide supports to our learners, and in the next section that Michelle's going to address, sort of what we do with that information from the time that they're initially identified.
Yeah, and we have on the document itself, the reason why we call it a live document is that there are links. And so if you click that link, which hopefully when I click it, let's see though, because this is a PowerPoint and we know what can happen with PowerPoints. So come on over. Is it coming over? Can you see it? So if we click that link, okay, it is not taking us where I would like us to go. Hi, 1 second, please. Let's see if I can pull that on the screen. So if we click it, it should take us over here to the WIDA side where we can get into and locate the screener from here. Okay. Can we see the screen? I hope we're seeing the screen. Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right. And so this is where you'd be able to access a lot of the resources involving the WIDA Access 2.0. I'm going to shift it back over until when it's time to look a little bit at the score report, because there's also a score report guide. And Maria, I don't know if I can pull it up, but I don't know if you can say something briefly about the guide. Let's see if I can. Let's see if it's coming up. Hold on. All right. Let's see. Okay. Okay, hold on. Okay, so I'm going to head into the other section because for whatever reason the links are not cooperating at the moment. So this is why also we provide this as well separate like this on the screen, so that should further assist. So the WIDA assessments do not have an interim tool, but the can-do descriptors may be used as a progress monitoring tool if the teacher has access to a student's prior score. So they can help the teachers determine what the student is able to do with language in each domain and how to make instructional choices for the student. The state does not provide the WIDA model as a progress monitoring tool, but it definitely can be purchased by districts if they choose to progress monitor using that WIDA model online paper tool.
And Michelle, if a district is interested in learning more about the WIDA model, we actually did an online session with WIDA and the folks from WIDA to support our understanding of the WIDA model earlier this year, and it is recorded and available on the in the secure portal for folks that are already have WIDA accounts, so that they can listen to that recorded webinar as well.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Thank you. So the can-do descriptors, I shared a little bit on that. Maria, are you able to shed a little bit more light for anyone that may not have utilized a can-do descriptors? Let's see. I am trying to still pull it up on this side. On the can-do descriptors. Okay, here we go. All right, here we go. Okay, so the can-do descriptors on the WIDA side, and we know that the WIDA's link has changed to wida.wisc.edu, and so this shows what the students can do at various stages of the language development. And so the educators, you can use it, and they highlight here how you can also use the can-do descriptors, which is to collaborate and engage in conversations about language and to advocate for language learners, and definitely to understand the access for ELL score. So this is how we can utilize those as an interim or as a progress monitoring tool. I'm going to check the chat box. Okay, good. No questions. Okay, thank you. Bear with me. I'm juggling between the PowerPoint and the the internet. Okay. And so finally, we have the summative, and the summative is computer-based, and the adaptive testing routes the students to easier or more challenging content based on their performance. And then the LEAs use the scores to evaluate their language support programs, to monitor student progress in acquiring English, and to determine if a student is eligible to exit an English learner support program. And so on the website, you should be able to use these links, and I'll double check them when I'm offline to make sure that they're linking to the score reports and what you need to access. Okay. Let's see. Are there any questions on what we've shared so far? So we are sharing just on the content pieces of the WIDA assessment and how it can be used to screen, progress monitor, and now use as well as a summative. And so I think I showed, let's make sure. I think I showed yes, here it is, a web page of how to use the score reports and how, so the type of scores, the scale scores, the proficiency level scores, and using those test scores, all right, to make those decisions, particularly about exiting EL status, all right. And so on this page, definitely you can also see that there are sample score reports and different frequency reports as well on this page. Yeah. Okay. Maria, did you have anything else to add on that, or because I was just basically
Just
showing you
that,
where it
so
is?
most of our students will take an online assessment in grades 1 through 12. Some students do take a paper assessment if they need that as an accommodation. And then our kindergarten assessment is one-on-one, strictly paper-based, allowing the students to manipulate materials. So each of them are slightly different. And then there's the alternate access for our students with severe cognitive disabilities who are otherwise unable to participate in the traditional access.
Yes.
So there's sort of 3 different assessments that a student may take, all of which are measuring their proficiency and their growth in English. So somewhat different than many of the other assessments that students take. The access test is truly measuring progress, not just against a single bar and a standard, but progress over time for a learner and their growth in language. So a little bit different than we would see in other content areas.
Yes. And then as Maria mentioned about the alternate access, the scoring, so from that main scoring page, there's definitely a link here that takes you to the alternate access and how it's scored, and again, utilizing those scores as well. So it shows the proficiency level scores and the type of score reports that are given as well for the alternate access. Okay. Thank you so much, Maria. Pulling back up this PowerPoint. Okay. So to review, our definition of a balanced assessment system is the interconnected assessments that are used in the state of Delaware and how they are implemented to meet the needs of educational stakeholders, and they're used to best improve educational practices. So what are the differences between assessment types within a balanced assessment system? Formative assessments are designed to inform teaching and learning by providing specific, immediate, and actionable feedback through a process of continuously gathering evidence of student learning that are student and classroom centered and answers the question of what comes next for student learning. The interim and benchmarks assessment are to monitor student progress toward longer-term goals by providing multiple data points across time through assessments administered at specific intervals during the academic year that are classroom, school, and district centered, and also answers the question, what progress are students making and is the program working? Summative assessments are designed to evaluate learning relative to specific learning standards or goals by providing an overall description of student learning status through statewide district or classroom standardized assessments that are school, district, and state centered, and also answer the question, to what extent did our student meet the learning standards? Finally, we hope that by using the state of Delaware's overall balanced assessment system model and each of the content area models, you now have a greater understanding of the different assessment types that help to support student learning and allow students to promote their own growth. Okay, so this is just a graphic that shows what else we have coming up in the webinar. So we just did the content specific balance assessment models. Then we have the reporting and data literacy coming up next, as well as connecting assessment to curriculum and instruction. And Samir Tawar will be leading that reporting and data literacy, and Maria Paxton is taking the connecting the assessment to curriculum and instruction. So this was just a brief overview, and we'll get more in details with those other 2 webinars that we're hosting as well. Okay. So this is information on the course. There are 2 Schoology courses to support LEAs that you can use with assessment literacy and balanced assessment system. These are the course numbers for balanced assessment and fundamentals of assessment literacy. And so I want to thank Maria Paxton, our Ed Associate for English Learners, for joining us today.
Thank you, Michelle. Michelle. Thanks for having us.
And so, yeah, if you have any questions regarding the information presented, please contact the Content Education Associates listed. We also encourage you to learn more about assessment literacy in that Schoology course that I presented before. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. Do we have any questions? Oh, my chat box. Okay. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us. This concludes our webinar, and we hope that you'll be able to join us for the other two webinar on the WIDA assessment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.